Hey everybody! I have some wonderful news for you today. I really do. This is such good news. Do you know that the same power and presence, the same force that put the galaxies into their spin, that same presence that works through every person to inspire them, fill them with wisdom, this force helps us to transform hatred into love and judgment into compassion. So with that force inside of us, we are unlimited, we are eternal, and we are infinite. And so with that, we will sing our theme song. I am free, I am unlimited, there are no chains that bind me. I am free, I am unlimited, right now, right now. I am free, I am unlimited, there are no chains that bind me. I am free, I am unlimited, right now, right now. And right now, Susan will read our daily word and our announcements.
Okay. Our daily word for today is secure. Our affirmation, all is well. Everyone needs to feel safe, to have an inner assurance as well as an outer assurance of sustenance and security. Today I contemplate the promise of divine protection. When Jesus wanted to reassure his followers, he reminded them that God is present in all creation, even caring about the tiniest bird. That idea gives me comfort too. I'm confident that the power and presence of God is protecting me in all ways. Anytime I'm concerned for others, I relax in the awareness that God is guiding my loved ones to peace and safety. I reinforce my sense of security through prayer, which deepens my conviction that all is well. From Matthew 6:26, look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? Our affirmation again, all is well.
All is well.
And our announcements. Today is Potluck Sunday. And don't worry if you didn't know, please stay and enjoy it anyway. It's also Birthday Sunday. And June birthdays on the list, I have Sally.
Thank you. I was thinking Potluck Sunday was next week.
You don't have to, it's your birthday.
Right.
There will be plenty, I'm sure.
Next Sunday is Father's Day, June 16th. And then the following Sunday will be June 23rd, right after summer solstice. And we will kick off our second annual Rainbow Series. Deanna will start with red and move through the colors of the rainbows in her 7, possibly 8-week series. And you'll send it out on the emails?
Yes.
Of what color. Remember last year we all joined in each week what color she was the theme of her talk. And so we all show up and it makes it really fun.
Yeah.
Also weekly questions. Deanna answers questions and posts them to YouTube. The link to this can be found on the Facebook page or in your newsletter, which you can sign up for at the website. The website is brightstarchurch.org. Course in Miracles meets every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. And also at the website, Deanna records most of her sermons in an MP3 format. You can find those there. You can also sign up for the weekly newsletter. And a calendar of events is on the website, along with articles based on recent sermons.
Thank you. And I actually updated it last week and got 3 sermons up that had taken me a little while to get up there. Yes, I have a very sensitive microphone. And it can hear the neighbor dogs barking. Like one time I was recording and I could hear my neighbors talking on it. They were in their backyard, so I thought, that's so funny. So yeah, it's a great microphone. All right, today's talk is called Being the Eternal Being, and that's what we are. In the book of 1 Corinthians, Paul says, "Do you not know that you are the temple of God and that the Spirit of God dwells within you?" Okay, God dwells within us. And we talk about that all the time, right? We're the infinite being in a body. God works through us. God does for us by working through us. Okay, so God is within us. Heaven is within us. Paul also went on to say, "You are children of light. You should act like children of light." Okay, so there, he's saying, you're children of light, you should act like it. We have an infinite source moving through us all the time. Yeah, think about the times we don't act like it. We forget. It's like, oh, this is impossible. I can't do that. Why did I even think of that? Because we forget that we're an infinite being in a body. We forget what it is that moves through us. Now, over the last few weeks, I've been talking about this a lot. And I don't know, I didn't really plan it that way, but it ended up being that way. I'm talking about we're being an infinite being in a body through allowing, through increasing our awareness, right? In the Bible, remember the Lord's Prayer, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." It is God's will for us to bring the infinite through us into this reality, into this life we're living. Okay, right now, right this moment. Okay, that is God's will. So that gives us more awareness. When we are more aware of what it is working through us, we have less fear. Okay, so we can do more. We can be, do, live, love more. We can express love more. We create more because we have less fear. Okay, it's hard to have fear when you also remember you're an infinite being in a body, right? Now, I got a letter last week, an email last week. I meant to bring it today, but it was from a gal who watches the stream from Florida. Her name's Mimi, and she gave me permission to share her letter. But it basically went something like, I enjoy watching the sermons, and even though I watch them later, because of the time difference, I always feel high energy, I always feel like I'm right there, and I feel really good about it. But then, a couple of days later, I go back to my same old self. Okay? And I'll say, yes, Mimi, thank you for your question. We are so happy you're watching the stream. But yes, that happens to me. I won't speak for everybody here, but I'm working on this throughout the week. And while I'm working on it, I'm feeling happy, right? But I'll still get to a place where I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm worried about this. But being in a group like this, it is so easy to forget about my worries because I'm so present with everybody. Everybody here is so loving and happy, and this is just such a wonderful group. I would really have to work hard to be stressed out, right? I would have to like write down my worries and like glance at them, right? So I could go to that place, but I'm always I'm always so present here. And we notice that when we do anything with complete presence, we're really happy. And so that has to do with frequency. Okay, we carry a frequency with us. Everything has a frequency. Now, scientists, and not just one or two, many scientists have been studying the frequency of the human energy field since at least the late 1800s. Because there is a machine in the local hospital that you all have heard of that was invented in the late 1800s that measures human energy field and frequency. Now there is a device, I'm going to name off some devices here. The first one, the squid magnometer, that was invented in the 60s. It looks like Magneto, the X-Men, right? Okay, magnometer. Now that I've seen that, I'm not going to be able to say it right. Okay, but that was invented in the 60s. It measures the human energy field frequency. The ECG, you know what that is, right? The electrocardiogram. The EEG, the electroencephalogram. The MCG, the magnetocardiogram. The MEG, the magnetoencephalogram. Okay, these are all devices that measure human frequency. Okay? Now, Professor Valerie Hunt from UCLA, she's now a professor emeritus, but she did some experiments with this. And they didn't kick her out because it was very valid to UCLA, okay? So she's now a professor emeritus. She used an EMG, which is an electromyogram, and she measured the human energy field with this device. Now what she found was that under normal, mundane circumstances, when people were doing things that they had to do, it wasn't terribly exciting, just like, oh, I gotta get through my day, they resonated at around 250 cycles per second. Okay, now, when someone was doing something that they were excited about, and when God is working through us, what are we, right? We're excited, we're enthusiastic. Those people resonated between 400 and 800 CPS, okay, cycles per second. Now, a person who was just very highly spiritual and always felt this connection cycled almost all the time at 900 cycles per second or above. And this machine could measure up to 20,000 cycles per second, okay? So, the reason that we forget who we are after we have a nice experience with a nice group of people, even though we really, really felt our connection to God, later on, we can forget who we are because of the change in frequency. Now, it's important for us to maintain our awareness of our frequency because we want to keep it raised so that we have the awareness of who we really are. So we have awareness of what is working through us and where we came from and why we are here. Okay, so when we have the awareness of God working through us, we automatically are raising our own frequency. Okay, so when God's working through us, we keep getting reminders of how God is present in our life, and we can sometimes get those reminders in ways that will surprise us, okay? Through synchronicities, through maybe a vision, through dreams, okay? Maybe through just some sort of interesting manifestation that happens in our life. Nikola Tesla, a scientist that has been deemed as brilliant and amazing as Albert Einstein, some people say even more so, he said, the day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. And that time really is right now. Okay, scientists are starting to study non-physical phenomena. Okay, what our ancestors called evil may have just been things that couldn't have been explained, right? What if Lauren had his eye touch? Okay, it was fully charged. This little tiny thing has all this music on it and books on it. He took his headphones and we transported him to 1600s Massachusetts. And he let somebody put that in their ear. And he played a song for them. Okay, poor Lauren would have been hung for what? Witchcraft, right? What's one person's witchcraft is just another person's genius, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was just the time. Having awareness of what works through us changes our perspective on things, okay? Opens us up. Now, in the book of John, John says that the light made everything. The light put the light into every person. Okay, every man, woman, and child has this light inside of them. Now, Paul had also said that, right? You are light, you're children of light, act like children of light, right? They were not saying God is like light and we're like light. They were saying we are, okay? But what John didn't know, what Paul did not know, was that in our lifetime, a scientist discovered something called a quark. Now, a quark is a string of light. A quark is the building block for the teeniest particles that we learned about when we were in school, okay? The protons, the neutrons, something called a hadron, which I didn't learn about until I started watching this show, The Big Bang Theory. Okay? Now, everything starts off as a string of light then, and it just depends on its frequency as to what its appearance is. So a rock, a boulder that's heavy, has a different frequency than a cheese puff that is really light. Yet they both start off as a string of light. Okay, so this light, also known as God, is the building block for everything. Now you might be saying, why the science lesson? Because I normally don't talk about science, right? I really normally don't talk about science, okay? But this is because it's about having awareness of what is moving through us and being open to an unlimited force presenting its ways to us in ways that can surprise us. Okay? There's a story of two young fish and they're swimming in the ocean. An older fish swims by them and says, "Hey boys, how's the water?" The two fish look at him and they say, "What's water?" Okay? It is about having awareness of what's going on around us. Now, we don't always have awareness of everything. Okay? We don't. There are some things in our lives that exist. We don't see them, but we know they exist because of the evidence of their existence. Okay? Like the internet, right? We can see it on a computer, but there's something, it's somewhere. It's floating around somewhere. I don't even know where it is, right? But the internet is out there. Okay? Radio waves are out there. Okay? Electricity is out there. And electricity has always been, right? 500 years ago, we would not have seen evidence of electricity. I mean, we'd have seen lightning, but we would never, people could never have imagined that that lightning would power a phone, you know, that's plugged into a wall, of course, but, or a light, right? Or a stereo to play music. Okay? That was still all just in the field of potential, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't there. There was something, though, that existed that just could not yet be explained. I read this book by Sandra Champlain called We Don't Die. Now, I read this book because I thought it was about the afterlife, but it turned out to not be about the afterlife, really. It was more about this life, okay? And how it's about remembering that we're an eternal being. And so she talked about the afterlife. She talked about other odd occurrences that are really just reminders that we're an eternal being. Okay, although some people could call it, you know, craziness, all right? In 1600s Massachusetts, most of it would have been witchcraft. Okay? But she talked about, she says that this life is a game, and that the game is to forget who we are so we can remember who we are. Okay, so that we're always remembering to go back to God. We're remembering to have awareness. We're remembering if we feel fearful or worried or upset about anything, that that's not who we are, and focus back on that awareness of what it is that works through us. That is the game. And then we were given a voice in our head who says things like, "Are you kidding me? Why did you believe that? What were you thinking? Seriously?" Okay, it's that voice that is like, gives us wrong information more than it gives us right information. That voice will convince us that something that appeared miraculous was actually not all that special. Okay, and I have had that experience myself personally, where I've had something very tremendous happen, that it like changes me in that moment and for days, but then like a couple weeks later, that voice will be like, "Oh, you know what that really was?" And it will want to talk me out of that. I started writing down all the weird things that happened to me in a journal, so I can go back and read about it. Okay. Now, she started doing some interesting experiments because she's very skeptical. One of the things was that she got a deck of angel cards by Doreen Virtue, and she drew the same card 6 days in a row, the music card, 6 days in a row. Now, this happened to me when my daughter was a baby. I had a different deck of angel cards, and I was at a crossroads, and I wanted to know, I was on this path, but it was difficult. It was so hard. It didn't feel right, but I was scared to not do it because it seemed like it's what I should do. But I wanted to go this way. Every day for like a week, I drew 2 cards out of my deck. Every day for a week, I drew release and transformation. Every day. Just those 2 cards. 2 cards repeated themselves to me. And I didn't even remember that until I read Sandra's story about her music card. And I was like, oh, that did happen to me. I didn't make that up. Okay, so that happened. She also decided to do a remote viewing experience. I don't know if you've heard of remote viewing, but the government, our own government, governments around the world, the military, have studied this, where they will train a soldier to go into a deep meditative state and go out of their body. And they will go to like another military base and they will memorize everything they can. They will come out of the meditation, they'll draw out a map, and they've been so accurate that the maps are actually used on future missions. Okay, so remote viewing, I mean, I've tried it myself and I'm just like falling asleep or whatever. Sandra decided she would try it because she didn't believe she could do it, and she ended up doing it and really surprised herself, right, that she could do this crazy thing. So we've got these miraculous things that happen to us, and we talk ourselves out of them. Now Paul, St. Paul, had a vision of a man who was dressed as a Macedonian who said, please come help us. So he told his companion, I think it was Luke was his companion, we've got to go to Macedonia. I had a vision. Okay? He didn't say, oh, no, that was just weird. You know, somebody must have mentioned Macedonia and I ate this potato and then I just like had this weird vision and it just, you know, right? No, he didn't doubt it. Remember, Paul said, when you receive wisdom or inspiration from God, just follow it. Don't doubt it. Don't dispute it. Okay, so he did not doubt or dispute this vision. He just went and did it. He also dealt with spirits. Now, on his trip to Macedonia, he met a girl who was possessed by a spirit, who was really, it seemed, when I read the story, it seemed like she was promoting him and what he could do by saying, here comes a man of the Lord, he's coming, he can do this, he can do that. Well, apparently it annoyed Paul after a while, and so he cast the spirit out of her, because I guess he just got tired of hearing about it, I don't know. But he didn't doubt the occurrence. Okay, he just dealt with it. In a letter to the Corinthians, he said that materially minded people cannot understand spiritually minded things. Okay, that we had to have the mind of Christ working through us to be able to understand spiritually minded things. Okay, that so materially minded, we're just focused on only what we know and our limitations. With the mind of Christ working through us, we become unlimited. And then there's a world of possibilities before us for that. In 1 John, John says, don't believe every spirit that comes to you. Test them to see if they are from God. Now, both Paul and John acknowledged that there were spiritual support and help. And they were not the only ones, okay? I would not have enough room to write out all the different ways, but Jesus said it, a friend of Job said it, okay? But there is, spiritual support is acknowledged, okay, back in that time period. Okay, so it's there for us. We have awareness of it when we're letting the same mind that worked through Christ work through us. Okay, because that is the God mind, okay? That's the God consciousness. That is that awareness of what it is that works through us. So suddenly, everything becomes possible for us. There's infinite potential in ways that we can be reminded over and over again of who we really are and what we're capable of. So a mind that says, God is limited, we can't be inspired, we can't receive visions, that is not a mind of the Christ mind. Okay, that's the part of us that wants us to stay in the game. And so it's convincing us we're separate. It's convincing us that these special things aren't really happening. It's convincing us that a voice of love from a deceased loved one didn't really come through for us. Okay, because it wants to keep us separate. So I started doing some research on some books on near-death experiences because I thought, well, it's fear, lowers our frequency, right? And we want to have this awareness of what works through us, right? And so what better fear to overcome than our fear of death? Because then what's left after that, right? So this one book I read was by Anita Morjani called Dying to Be Me. What fascinated me about this book so much was not her near-death experience, which was very beautiful, but the medical evidence surrounding her illness. She had advanced stage lymphoma. She had, between her neck and her abdomen, she had like a bunch of lemon-sized tumors. She didn't wake up one morning, so her husband called the ambulance. They took her to a hospital. They told the husband that her organs were shutting down, okay, and she was in a coma. Her neck and her lungs were filled with fluid, so they had to like stick this thing in there to drain the fluid out of her. She went into a coma for 30 hours. Now, while she was in the coma, she had this loving experience. She is Hindu in background, but as a child, she had been frightened by some Catholic nuns because they were telling her she needed to be Christian. So she felt really guilty because she wasn't Christian, and she asked her parents to take her and you know, get her this training or learning or whatever, and they just like, no, you know, don't worry about it. So she had guilt. She went back and forth with this guilt. And what she found out was in this near-death experience that everything was just love. And she was loved and accepted for who she was. And that the biggest obstacle ever that anyone needs to overcome is loving themselves. Okay, when we're not loving ourselves, we're not honoring that presence that works through us. That lowers our frequency, which makes things in our life harder for us. Okay, it's having the awareness of who we are and loving ourselves without judgment, completely accepting ourselves. Okay, that is what helps us to maintain awareness of what it is that works through us so that we can do what it is we're put here to do, which is to be, do, live, love. So she also saw that things don't really need to be fixed. We should not judge things around us. Just say it is what it is, and I'm going to love, love, love. Okay, that's a good thing for us. Now, when she wakes up, there were a lot of things that happened in her room, but in a coma, you know, people can hear things and you just don't know for sure. However, when she woke up, she knew her brother had already been on a plane and was already there. Okay, her husband didn't know that her brother had already flown out. Okay, until he arrived out there. She also knew that her husband and her doctor had been down the hall having a conversation about her, and she was able to repeat that conversation. And then, see, there was one more thing. Oh, she recognized her doctor. When he came into her room, she'd never seen him before. She was in a new hospital. She knew his name without him introducing. So even if she had heard, she recognized his face. Okay. Now, the doctors did a bone marrow biopsy on her because they wanted to know how much of the cancer was in her body so they could know how much medicine to give her. They found no cancer in the bone marrow. So then they sent her to radiology to get a lymph node biopsied. The radiologist had all the MRIs from 2 weeks ago that showed all those lemon-sized tumors. He couldn't find any. There were none there. Her doctor says, well, she has cancer. It can't just go away. It did. Her cancer went away. There's a lady named Carolyn Mace, and probably a lot of you have heard of her. She teaches a lot of mind-body stuff. And she did a workshop, and one lady came to her workshop and told her about a near-death experience she had. She'd been in a car accident. She felt herself float up out of her body. She could hear the cars behind her grumbling about the accident. Oh man, car accident, I'm gonna be late, I'm gonna be stuck in traffic, right? Well, then she saw a beam of light shining into the 5th car back from her. She wondered what that was, and immediately, just after questioning that, she found herself right outside the car. The woman in the car was praying for her. And so she thought that must be what the light was from the prayer. Well, she memorized the license plate. Then she was pulled back into her body. She went to the hospital. She was there for a while. She recovered. She remembered the license plate number. She tracked down this woman, and she went to her house. This woman really existed. This woman had really been there at the accident and had really been praying for her. So that was pretty remarkable. So I read some more stuff. People who have out-of-body or the near-death experiences tend to come back believing that they feel a bond with all people. They feel like they have a fresh start. They feel more open-hearted and compassionate and non-judgmental. Okay, they have that because of the awareness that they have now, that they are an infinite being in a body and that God is always working through them. So that awareness is easy for them because of their experience. But we can still have that awareness ourselves just by practicing it. Just by saying, I love you. When we do something and we want to judge ourselves and jump to some kind of judgmental, critical conclusion about ourselves, you know what? Just say, I love you. Look in the mirror, say, I love you. Close your eyes, say, I love you. I love you, I love you, I love you. You're precious. And it works. I've been trying this, I have been practicing it, and I feel good after I tell myself I love myself a few times. I think a few years ago I would have been really weird about doing that, but now I'm just like, oh, whatever. Helen Keller, she said, she was blind. Okay, I don't know if you guys remember Helen Keller. She said, death is no more than passing from one room to another, but there's a difference for me, you know, because in that room I shall be able to see. There are many near-death experience studies of blind people who were blind from birth. They've never been able to see. They have a near-death experience, they can see, They go back into their body then, and they can't see, but they're able to describe what they saw well enough, although it's really hard for them to describe things. They have no idea, what they're seeing. But they could still describe them well enough that there is no doubt they were actually out of their body. Okay, that they were actually witnessing something that was happening in that moment. So I read that book, We Don't Die, all about who we really are right now and all the remarkable experiences that we talk ourselves out of. And I just thought the big thing is for us to just be reminded of who we are. Okay, we forget, we get fearful. Okay, so we go back to that. What is it that works through us? Now, if we can remember that it's God that works through us, okay, there's an infinite amount of possibilities that is before us, right? Now, I'm going to list some strange experiences, okay? Last week, my friend Candace told me that she was taking her daughter to the dentist office. She got to the dentist office and she thought of an old client she hadn't seen for a year, right? She works with autistic, Asperger's, ADD kids, okay? So this was a kid. She thought of him out of the blue. She hadn't seen him for a year. And she thought, that would be so weird if I were to run into him at this dentist office. Well, she didn't run into him that day. She had to go back a couple of days later, and he was there. Okay, he was there. Now me, I have had a lot of experiences myself that I've tried to talk myself out of. But most of my experiences have taken place with my clients because I've just been I felt really happy when I have been with them, and so it feels like my frequency is up. Now, when our frequency is higher, remember, it's easier for God to work through us, and so these things happen easier. That is why so often when people are experiencing grief, they're not the ones who get the messages from their loved ones. It's somebody else whose grief is not quite as deep, okay? Now, I had a client one time, I was working on her when I did massage therapy, and suddenly I smelled pancakes, bacon, and maple syrup. This is at like 5 or 6 in the evening, okay? Probably closer to 5. Pancakes, bacon, and maple syrup. This is a very specific smell. I wasn't thinking about breakfast. I don't even remember that I was hungry. But I told her, my client, I said, I suddenly just feel like I need to have pancakes and bacon and maple syrup. She says, oh, that's what I'm fixing for dinner. Okay? Now, it's just a silly thing, but we're all connected. Okay? When God is working through us, we have the awareness that we are all one. We are one in God, and that every single person also has that light of God working through them, right? I had a client come to me one time, and she had just lost a friend, okay? I had a vision of a lady with white, poofy hair like a cloud. Okay, that's what I remember what I thought. It was like a cloud, and that she'd gone up to Northern California. So I said this to my client, and she said, she did. She had white, poofy hair. It was like a cloud. And I asked her, I said, well, did she go to Northern California before she died? She said, no, after she died, that's where they took the body. Okay? Again, just a little thing. It's a little thing. But when we write, we've all had those little things. Everybody has. And when you've thought about a friend over and over and over again, and then they call you, right? Or you call your friend, and they're like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about you. I just really would like to talk to you. It's because we have that connection. Well, we have a connection with everybody. But there's something inside of us that maybe is not understood right now. Okay? But maybe in 10 or 15, 20 years, we'll know why that is. Because we're all connected by the light. The light is God. God has created everything. It's just that everything vibrates at different frequencies. Okay? I had a friend who died, and I found out the cause of his death before it was told to me. I had a friend who told me she was moving and that she had gotten sick. But she didn't seem sick to me. But what I saw all of a sudden was that in her head there were these fireworks. She told me then she had what she thought was she didn't call them a mini stroke. It was something else like that, though, like a bunch of little firing off in her brain, and they had made her kind of dizzy. Okay. I was teaching a meditation class, and I was asking everybody to just focus on receiving like a guide from spirit, right? Somebody who would come and work with them. This one lady kept saying over and over, she couldn't do it, she couldn't do it. There was nobody there, nobody there. So I sat on the floor with her, and I just thought, I'm just going to try something weird. I'm going to go in her meditation with her, right? And I closed my eyes. I saw myself go in there, and I saw Jesus. And I opened my eyes, and I said, do you see Jesus? And she's like, well, yes. She goes, but I couldn't believe he would want to come and talk to me. So I'm like, well, that's crazy. Of course he would want to come and talk to you, right? But she was fearful of that. She thought she was making that up on her own. Like, Jesus is too busy to talk to her or something, right? And so we had that little connection. When Macy was little, she was like 2 years old, I saw like a purple orb of light out of the corner of my eye. And I kept thinking, am I crazy, or was it like retina burn or something? I don't know what I saw, right? She, just this little kid, is like, Mom, I see this purple light. Okay? Adam, when he was like 3, these kids never knew their grandfather, okay, any grandfather, right? Well, Adam comes to me, he said he'd been dreaming of his grandpa Mike, and they'd gone fishing. Now, we didn't really actually even talk about his grandpa Mike, so he didn't know. We talked about the fishing after he had the dream. But he comes up to me and he says, do I need a fishing pole? And I'm like, why do you think you need a fishing pole? And he says, well, I had this dream, and I was going to go fishing with grandpa Mike. And I said, oh, honey, no, you've got one there. And he says, do I like fish stew? Well, something I had to find out later was that his grandfather would make fish stew. It was kind of weird. Okay, so we have these weird things, right? They seem weird to us, right? Why do they seem weird? Somebody in our past told us it was wrong. Okay, somebody in our past said, no, you can't believe like that. Okay, that's the devil, or that's just wrong, or you're making it up. I think that's what most people probably heard. You're making it up, okay? In my family, it was like, well, be careful, it could be the devil, okay? There's a story in the Bible, though, where Jesus is accused of working with Beelzebub. When he's casting demons out of people, right? He's healing people. And yet these other people who were afraid, they were afraid. They accused Jesus of working with a demon, right? So Jesus' response to them was that the devil can't work against itself, or its house would fall. Okay, its kingdom, you can't divide its kingdom, or it will fall. So he says, if you are working for God, and that's who you're really working from, then things are going to work out. But if you're trying to say you're the devil and do good works, you're going to fall. Okay, you're going to fall. We've known people, I was thinking of somebody actually when I read that, where he kind of set himself up as a guru, and he loved the attention he was getting, and yet he would say mean things to people to make them insecure, so they would want to keep coming back to him. And they did. They would keep going back. But I just remember thinking, wow, what is going on here? That's kind of scary, right? Well, after several years of this, things fell apart for him, because he wasn't in integrity. He wasn't really working for the service of the greatest good. He was working for his own ego, right? When we are allowing ourselves to have awareness of what it is that works through us, okay, that it is God working through us, we're doing, living love. So what does that mean we're going to be doing in our life experience? We're going to be loving people. We're going to be having compassion toward people. Okay, if a spirit happens to give us a message, or we see an angel card that means something for us, that's coming from a space of love, right? Right? That's love. If we're working from love, and what we are doing is sharing love, we're not trying to manipulate somebody, we're trying to help, we're trying to share, we're being of service. Okay? That is from God. And that's just one of the infinite number of ways that God can work through us. Okay, the infinite number of possibilities and how that can look, how that can be expressed. Okay, so with God all things are possible. That's what Jesus said. With God all things are possible, except what? Okay, what is there? What is there that's not possible with God? With God all things are possible, except we have that sometimes, right? We'll think that. We'll think that. Something's not possible. We're limited somehow, okay? We tend to only understand what's familiar in our life. With God, all things are possible. We don't know all things because we have a limited experience here. We don't know everything. And that's okay, because our own mind doesn't need to have to be in control of everything. We let the Christ mind work through us. And then we have the awareness, and then the infinite possibilities are open for us. We just have to allow it to happen. So with God, all things are possible except what we refuse to allow. Okay, so yes, with God, all things are possible. I know one time I was praying, dear God, please help me figure out a creative venture. Help me figure out how to express myself. And I did this for years and years. And one day I was like complaining to God. I was like, you are not giving me any good ideas. You're not helping me. You're not blah, 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 blah. I'm so stuck, blah, blah, blah. Right? Not too long after that, I found this old goals journal of mine. And I had all these fantastic ideas written down. And I could just hear the divine just saying, yeah, right? I've never done anything for you. I gave you all these good ideas, right? I remember that story of the man in the village that was being flooded, and they were told to evacuate, and he's like, his neighbors were like, come with us, we'll get you out of here. And the man's like, no, I prayed to God, God's gonna save me. And the water starts rising. And then the Coast Guard comes through and they're like, here, come on, we'll get you out of here. No, God's gonna save me. Well, then he's on his roof because the water's gotten so high, and the helicopter comes by and says, come on, let us get you out of here. No, God's gonna save me. And he drowns, and he goes to heaven. And he's like, gee, God, I prayed to you, and you were gonna save me. I really believed in you, and you let me down. And God says, what do you mean? I had your neighbors offer to give you a ride. I sent the Coast Guard. I sent you the helicopter. Okay? It's all around us. It's our expectation of things that holds us back, that limits us. If we think something has to appear in a certain way, we've just limited ourselves. My kids, when they were little, I can remember their first experience with cheesecake. Okay, do you remember like ever watching anybody get their first bite of cheesecake? Oh, Adam was probably a year old. Macy was probably about that age too. They were so open to trying new things. And that piece of cheesecake went in their mouth, and they just had this look of heavenly bliss, right? They sucked on it, right? They were enjoying it, and their eyes were doing this. Like looking all over the place, right? They were scanning all these inner parts of their brain, I guess. I don't know. They loved it, though. They were so open. At one point, my mom brought some Kuka's Mexican food over for lunch. Adam would not stop messing with the hot sauce packet. He would not stop messing with it. He kept taking it. I kept telling him, no, baby, it's too hot. He was 2 years old, okay? It's hot. It's hot. Well, he's like, no, and he wanted it. Finally, I let him have a little taste of it. It was pretty hot, and he didn't like it, okay? My mom was just like, how could you let him do it? But you know what? He wouldn't let it go, right? But see, the kids, when we're all little, we are so open to new experiences. Now, Jesus even said, be as little children. Be as little children to experience the kingdom of God within you. Now, what is it about little kids that just makes the world magical? It's that they see the world with eyes of wonder. They have open minds. They have open hearts. When my kids were little, everywhere we went, they would make a new friend. And that would be their best friend, even though they'd never see the person again. It's like, yeah, they're a good friend, right? Even though they were like 3 or 4, they were open to every single new experience. They were delighted with everything. They were willing to be delighted. They expected to be delighted. When do we expect to be delighted, right? We want to be as little children also and see the world with eyes of wonder. Okay, be willing to be surprised and delighted. Then, with God, all things are possible. And then the ways that we are reminded of that we are reminded that with God all things are possible, and that this is an unlimited universe that works around us and through us, those ways are unlimited. So until next time, remember that you are a divine expression of a loving creator. You are a force for good. You are a light, and you light the way. With every beat of your heart and with every breath you take, you are radiating light and love out into this world around you. In everything you do, you are blessed, and so it is. Amen. Michael, could you reach our prayer box behind you and pass it on up? We're going to send some of that light and energy out into the universe now. Thank you so much. Okay, if everybody could just take a moment and just kind of center yourself right where you are. And just remember what it is that works through you. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Just imagine that at your center, right at your heart, there's this beautiful ball of gold light. And just see this light expand. See this gold light expand so it is outside of you. It's growing. And this gold light gets big. It even gets bigger than the building that we're in. Because you are an infinite being in a body. This golden light could just go and go and go. Be bigger than the planet. And as you feel this infinite source working through you, think about our friends right now who have prayers in this prayer box. And we see each prayer, each as a request for love, healing, and we just surround that with light. We surround it with love. We remember that in God, all things are whole. All things are in a space of being unlimited. And all things come from love. And we see them all surrounded by light, surrounded by love, filled with this light and filled with this love. And then we think about any of our own worries or concerns, and we put those into the light also. We see them already as whole, already as love, because we have awareness right in this moment of what it is that's working through us. We are made from this light. And we are here to express that light. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Mother, Father, God. And so it is. Amen. Okay, so now we'll get together and we'll sing our peace song. And we gather in a circle to do this.